Hello and welcome. We're going to wait a couple of minutes while Instagram does its thing and lets everyone know that we're here live. While we're waiting, let me ask you a couple of questions. Do you ever feel like you have vastly more potential than you're currently utilizing? Do you ever feel like you're just barely scratching the surface of what you're capable of experiencing and achieving? My bet is that your answer is yes to at least one of those questions, maybe both of them. And if that's true, then you're in the right place at the right time. Now, you might notice that our topic today is 5% or 95%. Which do you choose? And we're going to get into that in just a moment, but let me just say before we dive in that I'm going to share some statistics with you, and I'm going to share some science with you, and I'm going to keep it as straightforward and simple as I possibly can because that's how I like it, that's how I need it, and I'm assuming that's how you do too. And it's going to be very practical because if you answered yes to those couple of questions that I asked you a moment ago, then the simple answer, the broad answer, and we're going to get more specific in a moment, is that you have to become a modern alchemist. Now, let's blow out the misnomer of what alchemy is, because a lot of people, maybe most people, believe that alchemy is about turning base metal into gold. And I can promise you that that's an analogy. It's not to be taken literally. What alchemy really is about is taking something of low value, base metal, and turning it into something of high value, gold. You follow me on this? So it's not about literally turning base metal into gold. It's about taking something of low value, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and turning it into something of high value, which is gold, physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. Now, all alchemy is mental, emotional, and spiritual alchemy. More on that in a moment. But if you want to take something in your life, in your relationships, in your business, that's of low value, something you don't care for, and turn it into something of extremely high value, something you really, really want, desire, then you have to become an alchemist. And I'm going to talk about that in just a moment. But before we do that, let's talk about what you're dealing with. And we're going to have to jump into some science. So stick with me. Maybe you want to take some notes if you have something available. But first of all, modern science tells us that 95% of your DNA is what's called junk DNA. It's lying dormant. You are operating every single day on 5% of your DNA. And you go, so what, James? Well, your DNA is your genetic potential. Your DNA carries your genetic coding. Your DNA has your genome. And I could go on. But your DNA is important. And 95% of your DNA is what science now calls junk DNA. They can't figure out what it's there for. And it's lying dormant. Now, stick with me here, because this can be a little complicated. I'm going to do my best to keep it simple, but let me dovetail a bunch of different scientific theories together. Let's jump over to the field of epigenetics. Epigenetics tells us that 50% of who you are is driven by your genetic coding. That's your DNA. 50%, half of who you are. All the things you do or don't do. The way you think or don't think, the way you act or don't act, the habits you have or don't have. 50% of those are driven by your genetic coding. Now you go, well, James, I'm in trouble because my genetic coding is not that great and my family history is not real empowered. Well, here, let me give you the short good news is that 50% of who you are is your genetic coding according to epigenetics, but that leaves what? 50% that's in total control by you. Now, 50% of who you are is in your genetic coding. Let's go back to what we said earlier. 95%, your genetic coding is in your DNA. 95% of your DNA is junk DNA. It's lying dormant, which means you're operating on 5% of your genetic coding, your full potentiality and capability. Are you with me so far? Now, it gets more complex than that. Let's jump over to neurosciences. And neurosciences tells us that you are using, and different theorists have different numbers, but somewhere between 3 to 5% of your brain. So let's just round it up to 5 because that's a number we're already familiar with regard to DNA. You're using 5% of your brain's capability and capacity. That means 95% of your capability and capacity is lying dormant. It's not being utilized. Now, about 85% of the people on the planet believe in God or some type of creator. Maybe you do too. I certainly do. And so let me just ask you to consider this. What type of creator who supposedly loves us, what type of creator would send us to this life, would create us and send us into life and say, here's 100% of your DNA, your genetic potential, but I'm going to hold back 95%. You can only use 5%. Doesn't make sense, does it? What kind of creator who supposedly loves us would create us and send us to this lifetime and say, here's 100% of your brain's capacity, but I'm going to hold back 95%. I'm going to let you use 95%. You wouldn't do that to your kids, your cousins, your siblings. Am I right? Well, I'm really suspect that a creator God would do that to us either. So what's going on? Well, it gets better. Stick with me. And to go to this next piece of information, we have to go out to astrophysics. Astrophysics, the study of astronomy, is a study of the very, very large. And here's what we know in astrophysics, is that just nanoseconds after the Big Bang, and we can trace this back with the Hubble telescope, 95%, wow, does that number sound familiar? 95% of everything that came out of that singularity disappeared. Instantly disappeared. And so what the mysteries tell us and what astrophysics tells us now is that you live in a 5% universe. The study of Kabbalah said this way before astrophysics figured it out. You live in a 5% universe because 95% of it disappeared. Where'd it go? What's going on? Aren't these numbers sounding familiar? Now let me give you one more and then we're going to tidy it all up and tighten it up. Psychology, another type of science, tells us that 95%, oh, there's that number again, isn't it? 95% of what you do every single day is driven by your unconscious mind. 95%. So what astrophysics calls that 95% that disappeared is dark matter or dark energy. Psychology calls that your unconscious. It's dark. It's out of your awareness. And so what that means is that every single day you're interacting with people who are basically 95% unconscious. And you go, James, I know that guy. Including you, by the way. 95% of what you do and don't do. 95% of the habits you have and don't have. 95% of the decisions you make and don't make are driven outside of your conscious awareness, which means you're living a 5% consciously driven life. Now, there's repeating patterns here. And what's going on? I don't think a creator God would send us here and say you can only live a 5% life. Do you? So what's the other 95% for? Well, when we go to astrophysics, dark matter, dark energy is only invisible to us because it's vibrating at such a high frequency we don't have the acuity and the ability to perceive it. 95% of what drives your behavior every single day is outside of your conscious awareness. You're totally unconscious of it, and yet it drives your behavior because you don't have the ability to perceive it. 95% of your DNA is dormant. 95% of your brain is dormant. Why? Well, here's the reason why. Because you have to become a modern alchemist. It is your job to practice alchemy. Remember, that means turning something of low value into something of extremely high value. You've done pretty well with 5%. You've shown up, you have a job, you have children, maybe a family, you love someone on 5%. What could you do on 10? Don't even think about 50%. Well, that's your opportunity. Are you ready to seize it? Because the single most powerful thing that you must do in this lifetime is to make the unconscious conscious. You have so many things, 95% of what you do is totally unconscious. You have so many things in your unconscious, unresolved emotional issues, perceptions, programming, conditioning, socialized mind, all these type of things. And the single most powerful thing you can do is to make the unconscious conscious. And you want to raise your frequency so that you can perceive more in the universe and notice more in the universe, then you've got to make the unconscious conscious. You want to engage the DNA, then you've got to have more empowering, consistent emotions. And there's research from Heart Math Institute to back this up. Empowering emotions engage more of your DNA, and you have to have them consistently. Same thing with your brain. Do you know gratitude literally rewires your brain? It's healthy for your brain. But you see, the problem is that we say, oh, I'm going to be grateful, but then we get knocked off the horse because we've got these unresolved emotional issues. Is this making sense to you? Now, I know this is complex, but if you're ready to become a modern alchemist, then let me help you. Let me help you. I'd love to help you because that's the reason you're here. You're not here to have a job. You're not here to have a family. You're not here to fall in love. You're not here to make money. Now, all those things are great. That's part of life experience. Those are things you're here to experience in life. But your single driving purpose is to clean up, grow up, and wake up. And it has to happen in that order. You have to clean up the unresolved emotional issues, make the unconscious conscious. You have to grow up, and then you have to wake up. And I'd love to help you. We have a group called the Art of Alchemy. We get together live via Zoom every single Thursday night at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Doesn't matter where you are in the world. We have members all over the world. You can tune in via Zoom, and it's live and it's interactive. And you get the tools, the techniques, the strategies, the skills to become a modern alchemist. We talk about all these things that I've touched on here today and more. And it's not just me talking, it's live and it's interactive. You're on camera, I'm on camera, Bersabeh, my wife, is on camera. We're all on camera. We plug you into a community of people. We have you interact with them as well, and they would love to have you come join our community. They'll welcome you with open arms. You say, well, 5 p.m. Pacific Standard is not a good time for me, James. That's okay, because we record every single session, and we put them into a database. There's over about 250 live sessions there right now, live sessions that you have full access to 24/7 for as long as you're a member. So you're not ever going to miss anything. So if you're interested, come join our community. Let us help you. There's no better time than turbulent times for us to clean up, grow up, and wake up. There's no better time than turbulent times, which we're in right now in our world, for us to take our power back. There's no better time than turbulent times to realize what's truly important and to commit ourselves to the things that have lasting value versus short-term value. Just go to our bio here on the page, click the drop-down menu, go to the store, and look for the Art of Alchemy, a credit card, and a few dollars, literally a few dollars. Are you willing to invest $6 a week to get live tools, techniques, strategies, and skills to get a community that will support you and love you and help you to move in the direction of the life you desire and deserve? If the answer is yes, then go to our bio, click the drop-down menu, go to the store, and we'll see you tomorrow night. Look forward to having you as part of our community. God bless you. Thank you for your time. Lots of love to you, and I look forward to working with you starting hopefully tomorrow night and for sure really, really soon. God bless.